Good morning, everyone. I'm Nicole Harvick, and I am your host today of the Change Book International podcast. As you know, every Monday I bring you another fabulous author from the Change Book, and today is no exception. We have Pam Ray here, and I am so excited to get to know about her and learn about her. So, Pam, how are you?
I'm great this morning. I am so happy to be here and talk about change. I kind of made a life out of change.
Don't you think that's so important? I know some people that honestly have lived in the same city, same job, same.
Mm.
And sometimes I think there's a fear in change. And like I've told my daughters before, the minute you step over the fear, your life opens up and you can
Absolutely.
change
Yeah.
and you have to morph all the time. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. My career has been leading leaders and it's been all about change. I was in public service for a number of years and I was working for elected officials. And everything we did was about some sort of change that needed to happen, whether it was in policy or in funding. I had my own government relations business. Every client was about some change that they wanted. I did some nonprofit leadership, and it was all about that was getting into a time where people were beginning to resist change because it was happening in a way they weren't comfortable with. They weren't asking for it. It was happening in our economy and in our mental health and all these different areas. So I have realized that I've lived a life of leading through change. And what's happening now is I'm leading through different kinds of changes. But, it's weird, like this book came up and it was easy for me because I'm like, wait, somebody really wants to know about my experience with change because I recently wrote a chapter. Someone came to me and said, would you write a chapter for our book called The Weird and the Wonderful? And I'm like, what? Like people have called me weird my whole life, but no one ever said I was wonderful.
I know.
So it was perfect. First it was weird and wonderful, and now it's all about change. So I am right here. I am so
And
excited.
and I love that the change book is insights into empowerment.
Mhm.
And I think change is very empowering,
Yeah.
you
It's my
know.
life purpose. In my early 50s, someone said, what is your life purpose? And I had never stopped to live according to a life purpose, but I was living according to a life purpose. And it took me a couple of years. I kept looking at what I was doing, what I had done, and I'm like, I know what I've been doing. I know what my life purpose is. It is to empower others to be their own best advocate. And that's
Ooh.
what I did, in the political world, in the legislative world, in my government relations business. That's what I did with board of directors for a nonprofit. And that's what I'm doing now, only it's a little different in the sense that empowering others to become their own best advocate was once about me helping other people to tell their stories, deliver their messages to achieve their goals or their missions. And now it has become about helping people to tell their own personal story. And it took me having to work through this process of being able to tell mine, even being here right now, in order to come to this place where my focus is no longer so much on that external goal people have, but it's on an internal goal of reaching a higher level of self awareness as a leader. Because in today's world, we need to be a different kind of leader than we've been in the past. The old command and control is just not working. It hasn't worked for decades. You can see that in engagement numbers, how unengaged people are in their jobs. Um, and how important it is now to move to this place of our heart. And that's where heart centered leadership comes from for me. And that's where change, leading leaders through this kind of change means leading a human being who is in a family, who's in a workplace, who is educational scenario, or in our community. It's tapping into you as a person and into your heart. And the issues that we have to deal with now are just they're so they're so tough. I mean, things are so different now than they were for our parents and grandparents. And even, raising kids, how different it's been as a parent and the things that you have to address, the issues you have to address with technology, with school safety, or what's going on in the world and how it reaches down and impacts our kids.
Oh,
So, moving from this place where I was externally focused on people's mission and goals to coming to a place where I could learn to tell my own story so I could help other people to get into their hearts and do the same thing in that way and to be able to lead from that place. And there was a time around during the 2015, 16, 17, 18, I noticed in my workforce readiness, workplace development um, work that anxiety was showing up in the workplace, like in huge ways that it never had before. And it was like a mental health issue. So, people look the other way on that stuff. And I started to watch it for the workplace and for jobs and for how we prepared our kids. And all of a sudden, like it showed up at my front doorstep with my daughter with anxiety.
Ooh.
And so many other kids her age, she's 25 or 20, she's 26 now. But this was in high school and early college.
Oh,
And
that's so
so,
young.
yeah, but I did something people weren't doing. And to lead, I instead of just everybody staying in their own corner and not being able to talk about it and looking the other way, she and I decided after a couple of years of trying to figure this out on our own that we were going to bring people together and have a conversation. And so we brought together her friends and other students, parents, family members, and educators. And we sat them, we said, no one knew what to do because I came to a point where I said, Sarah, I don't know how to help you anymore. And she said, Mom, I don't know what to ask for. And so we had a number of these sessions in 2018, and we asked just one question. And that is, what is it you want us to know? And the students and our children were able to say, this is what we want you to know. Like, why won't you talk about this? And the parents were, basically like, we feel like we failed you because you have this anxiety issue. When in fact, it was like the world around them
Right.
was, that was all new and different and stressful. And the teachers were like, we are just telling you, we are seeing this everywhere. This is not just high school, college. This is middle school and elementary school. This is starting to show up. So it really brought out the need to start the conversation around things that we typically hadn't started conversations around in the Western world, because it is like a Western world thing to stay in your head and not really talk about emotions. But getting down into that heart and listening, becoming like a major focus of people's skills, is such a part of heart-centered leadership and such a part of where our leaders need to be these days. Understanding other people means you need to be understanding yourself. And
Absolutely.
right,
I love that you just said that. That makes so much sense.
we used to I used to look at Maslow's hierarchy, the triangle, and it had like those basic needs at the bottom. So most of my life, people only focused on those first two tiers at the bottom, like your food and your shelter and all that, which is so important. But today, I don't think it's linear anymore. I think you have to have the whole thing. And there's the self-esteem and the love and the belonging and the self-actualization that are part of that triangle. And so today, for me, we need to be focused on the whole thing. And that means leading differently, whether it's in our family or our workplace or in our friendships, even, and being able to kind of take on new skills, heart-based skills, listening, empathy, and understanding without judgment. There's so much work that we always need to do in that area too. So yeah, that's where I'm
Absolutely.
coming from these days. And
No,
that's
I love that. I love that. And one of the things for me to find and absorb my heart was forgiveness of myself. Did you utilize forgiveness on your journey at all?
a couple of years ago, this came up uh, in conversations with a leadership group. And I was like, I was not aware that forgiving myself was such a big issue that I could even do it. And so, yeah, that is one of like a major tools in moving forward for us is letting those things come out. And, where we used to think we had to be perfect. No, we don't have to be perfect. And we can let them go and we can move on and grow. And I'd love to know yours, because that's a work in progress for me now, is to still be able to process that forgiving ourselves.
Yeah, and for me, it was so interesting because when I went through my divorce, it was so awful for me. I found myself getting sick. I was scratching, my hair was falling out, and I had every certificate for every modality you could think of. Reiki and sound healing, cellular memory, but nothing was working. And I went just kind of on a deep dive of myself, and I heard, you haven't forgiven, you haven't forgiven, you haven't forgiven. And so I used forgiveness for my ex, which is not condoning what he did, but it still came back to me. I had to forgive myself. And one of the things was for not speaking my truth with him. I would just let him bulldoze me. And I never stood up for myself. And what I realized is I was very angry inside at me. And, I realized I had to do what I thought was right at that time, having two daughters. But when I finally forgave myself, Pam, it brought me to a place of self-love. And that was not even something I realized we could do for ourselves. And that, when I realized I could love myself and forgive myself, that was really like an epiphany for me. And that's what changed my view and took me into my heart, was forgiving myself. And I know now, like you talk about, it's a process. Things still come up, things we've buried deep in our subconscious. But I know that I will be a work in progress till my last breath.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I've given it different names over the years. Instead of knowing that I was, quote, forgiving myself, I think I just learned um, to understand that I was growing. There are
Yes.
things I went through, and believe me, if I didn't get the lesson, I got hit over the head with a 2x4, and that happened for a lot of my life until I finally kept going. Like, I just got hit over the head with the same thing, and it didn't feel good. So why would I do that again? And then I'd get hit, and it'd be a little less. And I finally recognized that 2x4, and I stepped back from it and said, "Okay, I'm going to get it the first time." So that I don't have to do that again. And then I can go and I can grow in other places as well. Um, but today's world is, I would say, like, one of the questions that I would ask people is like, um, what are people most desperate for today?
I like that question. And for me, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was desperate for, like, just inner peace. There was always turmoil of some kind,
Mm-hmm.
and that's dis-ease. Your body's at dis-ease. And that's
Yeah.
what causes sickness and illness, and, can even cause cancers,
Mm-hmm.
stomach ulcers. And I was at the point where I knew I had to do something or I was going to get terribly ill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for me, it was that connection with ourselves. And,
Mm.
I refer to it as a journey to a truly human connection, which I would say before the pandemic, I was really focused on, like, you and I having a conversation in person versus technology being in the way. But I have learned that we can do it this way and that we can connect. And so that connection with self actually comes with knowing that your voice matters. And that was something I taught people my whole life. Like, your voice matters. Like, I'm helping you develop your message and deliver it and achieve your goal. Your voice matters. And I would do this with, like, two questions in my world that I didn't realize were heart-centered leadership, because we didn't say that. You didn't really live it out loud. But I would always put these two questions on the table to constituents or clients or board members. And that is, based on the change you want to propose, what is the economic impact of your change? And then I'd ask the second question, which caught people off guard. And I would say, what is the human impact of the change that you're proposing? Because when we incorporated the human element into all of our messages, people listened differently. People leaned in. People connected from this place, from a different place than just this place up here and the data and the
Mhm.
paper and da 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 da. So, bringing those all together, all this kind of work we do to connect now with ourselves is helping us connect better with each other and give each other space, right? We're giving each other space to be able to talk about our heart and our forgiveness and things like this. And there's a tool of gratitude. When I call it a tool, I'm calling it that, just to describe how it can be used, like, in leadership. And starting every meeting by asking everyone to share 2 or 3 gratitudes is such a cool way to connect with a person, to learn about a person, to understand kind of their journey, what they're going through. And it makes it so personal. And also, it gives you a chance to connect with them on things that are similar to you as well. So I am a big fan of gratitude. I have been leading. Well, let me just say the first time before I began to lead a space with gratitude, I showed up in a space where they were asking me to share gratitude. And this was during the pandemic. And because before the pandemic, I was like, truly human connection means face to face, shaking hands, eye contact, this and that. And I had been raising kids on the challenges of screens. I was kind of like poo poo on screens. And I got onto this Clubhouse app in the second year of the pandemic because someone said, you need to go on this to meet your workforce and your educator friends. Well, I met a lot of leadership people. And one of the rooms I went into was a gratitude room. It's called the Daily Gratitude Movement. And people were sharing their gratitudes out loud. And I literally sat there for 3 weeks just listening, going, why would anyone care what I'm grateful for?
Oh, wow.
Because I had not told my story. I'd been telling everybody else's story my whole life. Like this was simply gratitude. And it took me 3 weeks to be able to build up the confidence to go, wow, these people really do care what other people are grateful for. And that grew into a place where I became a moderator and in other places facilitator of gratitude, and went on to meet Sid McNary in the Art of Peaceful Living. And he started every room and every meeting with share 3 things you're grateful for. And it just is normalized. For me, it's normalized. And I think we need to normalize it for everyone so that it's not just, it could be on a piece of paper, it could be in your diary, it could be you're walking around and saying what you're grateful for, but think about the impact of it when you share it out loud and people share it with each other and how you grow connection and community. So that's a really big one, right? It's simple.
And you're making people feel important by your curiosity, your true heartfelt curiosity. So, we've gone so long with the conditioning of that muscle memory of getting up, going to work, having lunch, going home, doing it again, again, again. And, people weren't interested back then. You just did what your boss said and you went home. And you're creating heart-centered, thoughtful humans, and you're changing a paradigm.
Yeah.
You are changing.
Yeah, because we have been through so many paradigm shifts that I would say the last 2 decades have been relentless, and now it's really, really at warp speed. So
isn't it wonderful? And I have to tell you, all mornings I wake up in gratitude, but some mornings I think, man, I wish everyone could feel like I feel. Knowing that my first breath I'm grateful for it, upon awakening. It doesn't have to be, it's just I get to breathe, I get to live another day, I get to walk barefoot, I get to go to the ocean. It's just sometimes simple gratitude means more to me than other things, because it's a consistent in my life. And I know I can count on it right now, So and to show someone that you care enough to ask, I think that's huge. Absolutely huge.
Yeah.
So congratulations.
You shared you're grateful for walking barefoot. We were just talking about this before we
started,
because, I would say the top 2 things people can do for themselves that connect them with their own heart is the listening from the heart and the gratitude and this kind of practices that we're talking about, but also connecting with the earth. Like literally, we can all do this for ourselves. And, if you haven't gone barefoot in the grass recently, if you haven't like literally touched a tree or stood among some trees or taken a walk in, grassy green areas, just try it, because there is something that happens in nature that brings you in connection with the earth that will help you to breathe, and it will release the tension in your shoulders. I know you have this too, this experience. And it was about 2023 in the fall. I was coming back from a lot of intense time with caretaking parents. And I was trying to get myself grounded again in my own world. And I started to go outside and go barefoot in the grass. And I challenged myself to do it for 21 days straight. And if I missed a day, I had to start over again.
Ooh,
The first time, yeah, so this was about accountability too. So the first time I did it, I think I got to day 11 and I was celebrating and then I missed a day. So I had to start over. So the first
not a
time I
bad
did
thing.
the first time I did it, it took me from like it took me more than a month. It took me like 5 weeks maybe. But I did it later on. My daughter's like, "Hey, I want to do that with you." So I'm like, "Yeah." And then she's like, "My friends want to do this." So we did it again. And just recently, I actually ran a program last month where we did it for 21 days straight. And people
Ooh,
got to pick more or less. They weren't like trapped into my definition of what I wanted to do, which was if I missed a day, I had to start over. But they picked other things. They picked like touching a tree, or they picked dancing every day, something that got them to feel their own bodies. But yeah, so go barefoot in the grass, go barefoot,
mhm.
you go barefoot everywhere. And
Yeah, I'm barefoot all the time.
yeah,
I told my kids, I said, look, I'm going to die with dirty feet, so don't judge me.
no, that's beautiful, but it's right there and it's spring in so many places. So instead of
Mhm.
just taking it all for granted or just being so busy or in our heads, like come out of your head to be able to connect with that part
Yes.
of what is all around us.
Absolutely. And you know what I'm noticing now as our bodies change from that thick, dense carbon base to crystalline, a much lighter frequency,
Mhm.
the sun. I just, I mean, we've always known the sun is very healing. People think it causes cancer. I don't believe that, but that's just me. And I've noticed that I can no longer wear sunglasses. I need the sun. It's
Mhm.
really strange. And I'll sun gaze, am, I am in gratitude because I live across the street from the ocean. And so
Nice.
I go sit and I'll look below the sun. And for me, sun gazing gives me a lot of energy. And they say it heals vision. So I've been doing a lot of that lately. Have you had that experience?
Actually, I have had a little bit opposite experience in terms of being in the sun. And I was a sailor at one point, and my doctor was like, my dermatologist was like, I really wish you'd take up caving instead of sailing because my skin does react to the sun, and if I don't take care of it and cover it up properly, then I have to deal with that on an issue. So
Yeah.
yeah, I have a little that's a little opposite from yours. I
Yeah, and
but
for
I
me,
can
yeah,
I can
it's
step
just a
into.
recent thing, and I listen to my body,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
it
but I
sounds like
can
you're
I want
listening
to
to
step
yours.
yeah, I want to step into yours where it doesn't cause health problems, where it is just a beam of vitamin D filling me up because I do feel like sunny days. I was up in Ithaca, New York this past week, and for 5 days straight, it rained and it was cold and it was cloudy. And the sun came out yesterday, and I was just waiting, waiting, waiting for the sun to come out wherever I was because it changes your mood and it builds you up and it does give you that vitamin D that we need, especially in the winter time and
No,
springtime.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so funny here I'm in South Carolina and I mean, it can be sunny one minute, the next
Mhm.
minute it's overcast and it's raining, and then an hour later it's back to sunny. So during the summer, you see people like, okay, it's raining, everybody comes in, then everybody goes back out. So we just, go in our house when it's raining and go back out when it's sunny. But I really do like to take advantage of the sunshine. So
Mhm. It
yeah.
makes me laugh when people are at the beach and it rains and they run to get dry. I'm like, you're at the beach, you're in the water. Or
The water
people,
was
I grew up on lakes and people at the lake, they would like run inside in the porch when it rained and then like, oh, you just got out of the lake, so you're wet.
what did, yeah, and their hair's wet and they've so I just observe it. But I want to add one of the things I saw in your bio that I absolutely love this, and I want you to give us a little more about this: inner strength, outer impact.
Mm.
I loved that. Tell
Yeah,
us
I
about
mean,
that.
yeah, I believe that this work we do to know who we are and to come into our true self impacts everyone around us. So if there is something, and I learned this way back, like learning to witness and learning to become aware of what is around you and what is happening and not standing in the drama all the time, but standing back from it and letting it happen and watch it happen and figure out, do you really want to be in that? Or do you want to kind of go inside yourself and figure out like what is my belief system on a certain thing? And is it a belief system I've carried from that group? Or is it a belief system I really believe in? And really sweeping out all the old belief systems and allowing myself to come forward. And the more I know that I have done that, the more I have shifted into like listening within myself instead of to what other people, trying to be what other people expect of me. We're trying to live like through other people's belief systems, which just feel like they used to feel like they were beating me up all the time. Moving through that stuff and coming into a place where I was realizing how I wanted to live my life and what I wanted to live. And it was really, living love out loud. And you can do that through these things we've been talking about. But when I do that and when I've done that, what I've noticed is that when I come into this new place and this more authentic place, people around me shift too. Like, to me, it's amazing. Like, and it can even be just the calm you bring to a scenario. So I had worked on a leadership team recently, and the head of that team had said, he said, I like it. I really like it when Pam comes into the room because things become very calm. And I can't say I was always like that.
What
I
a
come into the
compliment,
room
though.
like banging the table with the men at the table too. So I found my place to where I am, that calmness that comes into a room. Um, and that translates into our careers. I mean, how we show up in our jobs in our career or for anyone in our life, I think comes back to where we are in our families. And so really starting with your family as a core for finding like, who am I really? Can I really be who I am with my family? Because that's the hardest part. And if I can be it there, I can be it anywhere. And so, yeah, I've taken on that challenge too. Like, and that's another Sid McNary phrase. Like, if you don't have peace in your family, you don't have peace. But finding it there, working out who you are, changes who you are wherever else you go, and all the people around you shift too. So that's what I mean by inner and outer impact. And it's a return on investment in a business. So you become a leader who isn't just kind of beating the drum about meet these performance goals, but you become the leader who stops and listens or sets up this gratitude practice on your agenda when you have meetings, and people begin to respond to you differently. You're not just the one with a stick beating them, right? You're the one listening and connecting with who they are as a human being. And to me, that return on investment is huge in wherever we go, whether it's in our families or our businesses. So yeah, that's the outer impact.
That's amazing. And Pam, I could talk to you for hours, but we are almost out of time. But I guess one of the things I want to thank you for is being a ripple. You walking into that room and creating that ripple effect. So before we go, I want you to give someone just a little nugget of your wisdom, how to live, how to do this, to give us like one of your secrets.
One of my secrets.
Yeah.
One of my secrets is at this point is learning how to hold space for other people. And in doing that, I find you learn so much about yourself when you're in that quiet place. Because when you hold space for other people to share and be authentic, you're giving them the chance to go into that to shift from that inner place. And when they do, their outer impact will become more positive too. So I would say learning to hold that space. And one of the key things in learning to hold space for others and listening is not just being quiet. It's learning to listen without judging.
Power. That's so powerful.
Yeah.
That is so powerful. Well, I for one want to thank you for being on our podcast today. I love the fact that I get to do this because I gain so much wisdom from each and every guest, and you are no exception. But I love just your calm demeanor helps me calm down. So I want to thank you for being a guest, and I have absolutely enjoyed talking to you this morning. So thank you for being here. And to our guests, I put links on how to get a hold of Pam. After listening to her, I'm sure there are many of you that want to. I want to thank everyone for watching, for being here, and I will see you next Monday on the Change Book International podcast. Thank you.